So, according to a recent article written by a millennial, it turns out Gen X might actually be the cool ones. Like we needed to be told that, right? Stick around. Let's talk about it.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Rad, and I am back with another video. And today we're going to get into another article that I came across from Vogue, but I believe it's the British Vogue or whatever. So there's some people and terms that us Americans might not understand, but my European friends will. And so it's by this author and writer, Daisy Jones, who admits that she's a millennial, talking about um, how Gen X might actually be the cool ones. So for you millennials that may be watching this video, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not the one who wrote it. I'm just simply reading what it says, and I'll elaborate a little bit because, it got to be Gen X, right? So the article is titled, Hear Me Out. What if Gen Xers are actually the cool ones? So let's get into this article, shall we? She starts off by saying, I am 9 years old, and my mother, in her mid 20s at the time, is vacuuming the living room while my favorite game by the Cardigans plays on full blast. With each drum thwack, she hits another corner with the power nozzle, bare feet padding across the carpet in low rise jeans, watching deadpan from the sofa. I will always associate that song with this memory: sunlight splashing through the open window, those distorted vocals turned up to full, and the big blocky CD player with speakers that make your hands shake if you touch them. Those of you that follow my channel know that that's what I currently rock. Old school 70s, 80s, and 90s stereo components with speakers from the 1960s just on one of my stereos. And so, yeah, we put ashtrays and ceramics on top of them when we're not playing. We literally have to take them off before we play because they will bounce off and break on the ground. So that's the way music should be listening to, right? It not only should be heard, it should be felt. So, continuing with the article, though I was born in the 90s, a millennial, again, that's the author, not me, I was raised by a dyed in the wool Gen Xer and therefore spoon fed Gen X culture from an early age. Our CD rack was full of 90s bands: Pixies, PJ Harvey, Placebo. The films I later became obsessed with were of this era: Girl Interrupted, Fallen Angels, Run Lola Run. Honestly, I haven't seen any of those, but Hackers, badass movie. Have seen that one and I own it. And also, it's got a really amazing soundtrack. Excuse me a second. See, I did feature it in the video, guys. It's my Father's Day gift from my oldest. I am a rad dad. So, by the time I got into Bret Easton Ellis, Elizabeth Wurzel's Prozac Nation, and Irvine Welsh, all Gen X writers, of course, she's a writer. I'm not. I've never heard of any of these people, nor have I read their books. With Gen X sensibilities, something had become abundantly clear. I had been born 15 years or so too late. And now I was destined for a life of Instagram and ASOS packages. Again, don't know what that is, as opposed to being a 90s slacker, making mixtapes, and hating on my corporate job. Over the past few years, generational warfare has only ramped up, so much that it's become boring to even reference. Z- Oops. Gen Z hating on millennials for being cringe, millennials hating on Gen Z for being puritanical. Again, not a word I use. And everyone hating on boomers for being, well, boomers. Yeah, boomers, I think, are the ones that get hated on the most. I don't know why. When you get down into the people that look at their financial situations and the housing market and all that, they always seem to blame boomers. But again, as I mentioned in my last video, a lot of the people that we Gen Xers and millennials love to listen to musically or watch on the movies are actually boomers. It's just they're really cool. So we forget how old they actually are, but they're not Gen X. But Gen X, born somewhere between 1965 and 1980, has been largely forgotten about, although even saying that has become a cliche of sorts, right? Because all of the TikToks a year ago or so were all about the forgotten generation. And there's still TikTokers, some of the bigger ones that are Gen X content that still talk about it. It gets a little old after a while. We, I don't think we were forgotten. We just, being Gen X, just kind of stay out of things, which this article goes into a little bit. Alongside of the finger pointing among the generations are claims that actually we were never the cool ones. No, it was me. But what if it's none of us? What if the cool ones are actually the unbothered people that nobody talks about, which is us? Yeah, I'd like to say we were, right? Um, Again, here's Kate Moss. Every young boy in the 80s and 90s, or I'd say late 80s, early 90s, knew who she was. Um, Alexander McQueen, y'all may know who he is. I don't know who he is. Culturally, Gen Xers aren't immune to being cringe. Just ask my sons. They think I kind of am by doing these videos. And even my daughter, who I love, is not subscribed to my channel and will not watch any of my content. And that's okay. They're still banging on about one rave they went to in 1989. Hey, I'm guilty of that, but I went to more than just that. Even though they're in their 50s and no one cares, and they appear frustratingly unaware of the role that privilege played into their cynicism and ability to be disengaged. Now, that word here, where is it here? Privilege is one of those hot words in 2025. So I don't know what she means by this. I think a lot of us Gen Xers, aside from the color of our skin privilege that seems to be prevalent throughout social media right now, most of us weren't privileged. Uh, we went to school with all ethnicities, all nationalities, and we pretty much all got along. If you were a jock, you got along, doesn't matter what your background was. If you were in band, same thing. Same thing with skaters, the whole crowd. There was no privilege. There was no inherent hate that we see today. I'm sure it existed, not sure, I know it existed, but for the most part, it was unheard of because we just got along. And unfortunately, you don't see too much of that today. And there's no real way for us to prove it because we didn't photo everything, we didn't video everything. You just have to take our word for it. But Gen Xers, drop a comment below and let us know, right? Do you agree with the statement that I just made? We pretty much all got along back then, and there wasn't as much hate back then based on race, religion, color, even sexual preferences. Although it was made fun of a lot in the 80s, we all had plenty of friends that were alternate lifestyles. They were still our friends. So I continue here. But look, some of the coolest people to ever grace the planet are Gen X. Chloe, whoever this is, again, I don't know. Alexander McQueen, of course, I know Winona Ryder, Naomi Camp. Ugh, I'm not going to edit that out, folks. Naomi Campbell.
Go away, Baton!
And Kate Moss. Much of the music, art, and media created by millennial and zennial peers was built on the foundations of Riot Girl and zine culture. Sofia Coppola and David Lynch, Britpop and MTV. For a generation that so often goes unmentioned, they sure are everywhere you look. And I love that she wrote that because that's exactly what I've talked about in previous videos about the Gen Z kids with Depop and the way that they dress. It's cool, and I'm not one of those Gen Xers that are like, we were the ones that invented that, or we wore that and we did it better. Like, I don't care. I just think it's great. What I do say though is, if you are a Gen Z kid that's dressing in the stuff like we dressed in the 80s and 90s, and you see people like me still wearing it, because I still do wear it almost on a daily basis, then don't give us crap, right? About we're too old to be dressing like that because, you know, we are the ones who fashioned it back in the day. So there's no reason now if you're a 60-year-old woman wearing a crop top with all your junk hanging out and some skinny jeans with a muffin top, that doesn't really have to do with the style. It just probably means that you shouldn't be wearing it anymore, right? So I love the fact that she gave credit to a lot of what the younger culture is wearing today is accredited to us, and she goes a little bit further here. So style wise, Gen X was kind of vibe. Also, young people today dress like they just stepped out of 2002 in slouchy jeans and long sleeves under t-shirts, or else spaghetti strap dresses and ugly shoes, without playing down the millennialness of it all. It was Gen Xers who actually wore this garb first. True, true statement. Drop a comment and let me know some of the stuff you wore the late 80s, early 90s. So, and what she means by that is that now you have people like Roth, my son, dressing like 2002, although he doesn't say 2002. A lot of these younger folks think that that was the style that was from the millennials back then, when in reality, it was a carryover of the clothing that we wore that kind of carried over, right, to some of the cooler people in the early 2000s. So maybe because they're younger, they don't go as far back. People like Roth does. He knows where it comes from, but maybe a lot of these younger kids that are wearing it see some Blink 82 or something like that, and they think, oh, wow, that's from, the year 2002. But in reality, we were rocking that stuff back in even the 70s and in the 80s. Um, where did I leave off? And sure, bootcut jeans were sort of invented by cowboys, but would they have been what they were if they weren't to go to the go-to uniform for Gen X? Sometimes I watch old episodes of The Real Housewives of New York. Again, never watched an episode. Maybe Brandon, you have, because I know you and your wife are really into those reality TV shows. So you probably know every character uh, on this show right now. And sometimes, I mean often, and I think not by these girls ate. No, but these girls ate. They weren't adverse to a knee high boot in the club, and they also knew how to properly let loose. Gen Xers weren't waxing lyrical about like 12-step skincare routines. Obviously, separating and defining people by generation is a largely meaningless endeavor. And I think that's where a lot of people come off on this. A lot of the hate that we get on social media is because topics are trendy and these influencers hop on it. I'm a YouTuber. I don't like to say I'm an influencer. I don't have a big following or any following on Instagram or TikTok, trying to get it there, but I don't want to influence you. I'd like to just talk to you and educate you about the way we grew up. You don't have to agree with the way we grew up. You don't have to like the way that we grew up. But, you know, the history of our generation needs to be told by the people who lived in it, just like I can't talk about World War II unless I talk to somebody that was an actual veteran there, or watch some good stuff on TV. But there's not really anything on TV explaining Gen X, right? So it's kind of funny. That's why we get, you know, funny TikToks about us, and they are funny because it's largely a meaningless endeavor. That's something that I would say let the Gen Alpha and the Gen Z, or even the millennials that are aging like milk videos, let them battle it out amongst themselves. So I probably have more in common with someone 3 years younger than me, who would be Gen Z, than a 44-year-old millennial. And some 50 something is going to be wildly different from the next. I'm pretty sure Gen X invented the Karen haircut, although don't quote me on that. But as Gen Zers and millennials continue to argue over who's more cringe or who was born cooler, I'd like to offer an alternative viewpoint, which is this: maybe it's neither of us, and maybe we weren't ever the only ones in the race. So, to go back to the Karen haircut, um, I don't know if it was Gen X, because I don't know if the actress was. She's probably a boomer, but her name was literally Karen, I believe, on Married with Children. And yes, she had that haircut. So probably boomers. Let's blame the boomers again, right? So finally, a little bit of love from some millennials, and that's the end of the article. Uh, some love from the millennials on that. And it's cool to see that she wrote this because, when it's coming from us, me being 50, almost 51, when we talk about stuff like this, we tend to get the eyes rolled at us because, again, how did we look at our elders when when we were 15 years old and somebody that was 40 was telling us about how they grew up? We were kind of like, yeah, whatever. There's no way y'all were that cool. And then when you get older, when you get my age, you realize we kind of all do the same thing. It's just a little bit slightly different because things are different out in the world, but we literally all seem to do the same thing and then form our own stories from it. So, what are you? What are your thoughts about this? I'll take it. I think we were the cool ones. So cool that the younger generations now are recycling our style. They're recycling our music. They're recycling the tactile experiences of vinyl and cassettes and CDs that we all grew up with. They are using stereo equipment versus their iPhone or a Bluetooth speaker. They're actually setting up sound systems. So I like that. We were cool. And I'm glad to see that, again, as I've said in past videos, I'm glad to see that the younger generation is picking up the mantle and moving forward with that. But just know that it was us first. So, what do you think? Drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this article. Again, I'm reading their words. So, let me know below in the comments. And as always, if this is something that you like, please consider liking the video, subscribing to my channel, sharing the video out, hitting the bell to be notified of future videos, and take advantage of my candle company, totallyradcandle.com. Check out the website. Use the code that's on there to save 10% off your first order. And with that said, I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.